is an opportunity to get to know women who are currently serving in the legislature or seeking political office. And so we thank you for joining us. I'm happy to be joined today by two wonderful guests. Colt, who is a candidate for state's attorney for Anne Arundel County, and Pam Luby, who is a candidate for delegate of District 33, Maryland. So we're going to have an opportunity to get to know these two candidates. And first, I would like to ask you to walk us through your resume. Would you start in?
Sure. I've been a prosecutor for more than 20 years. I started my career in 1988, and I was a prosecutor in the Violent Crimes Division in Anne Arundel County. And I was appointed state's attorney in 2013 when Frank Weathersby retired. I was appointed by the circuit court judges to take his place. I'm running in 2018 as state's attorney again, and I look forward to having a chance to meet some of the voters this year.
Wonderful. And tell us about yourself, Pam.
Sure. So I'm an attorney and businesswoman from Anne Arundel County, and I've also been very active in my community. I am the past chair of the Anne Arundel County Commission for Women. I'm an attorney and businesswoman, and I live in Anne Arundel County. I have worked both in the public sector and the private sector. I work for large corporations both here in the U.S. and overseas. I also work for the Maryland Judiciary, and right now I'm working for a nonprofit that is doing substance abuse prevention.
So tell me, what interested you in politics?
Well, I kind of got forced into politics by virtue of my job. I was a lifelong career prosecutor, prosecuting the most violent crimes that occurred in Anne Arundel County: homicide, sexual assault, domestic violence. And I became a politician when I had to run for office for the very first time. But I'm doing something that I love, so it doesn't feel like politics. It's just a natural extension of being able to speak for people who can't speak for themselves, like I do in the courtroom. As a prosecutor, as the state's attorney for Anne Arundel County, you basically speak for the entire community about what's important to keep them safe and to fight crime.
And yeah, I think my interest started in politics when I worked for the Department of Family Administration for the Maryland Judiciary, and I worked on policy and I worked on laws to help people have better access to court.
Okay. So why do you want to work for the government? Why do you want to become a delegate? Okay.
Well, my whole race is because I'm not happy with who's in office right now. And I don't think that they're representing the voice of the people, and I am in the position in my life to step up and take on the challenge and have a voice and represent us.
And Anne?
Well, I think the citizens of Anne Arundel County deserve a prosecutor who is focused 100% on their safety for the families, not someone who's playing political games. And I've seen a lot of political games over the last 3 years in the state's attorney's office.
So tell me, what has been your most important accomplishment in your career? What would you say has been your most important accomplishment? Anne, you want to start?
Well, I think that being able to bring justice and peace for people who are victimized has been very, very satisfying. I get a very good feeling when I can represent a person who has been basically terrorized by crime, and to bring them back to a place of feeling whole and bringing a chance at justice for them. It's very satisfying at the end of the day to know that you've helped make that person be able to go on to feel a little bit better and not just be victimized the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm. And Pam?
Well, when I worked for the Maryland Judiciary, I came to learn that people who are under guardianship, they are not checked on. So once a judge signs an order for a guardianship, it's about 14 months before the court ever goes back to make sure that that person is okay. So I developed a visitor program using volunteers from the community where they would go out and check on the guardians, check on the wards, and then fill out a report and send it back to the court. So we had another set of eyes looking after our most vulnerable adults.
So I want both of you to share with us, what is your platform? So, you're seeking this office, and if you're seeking office, then you need to be able to tell people what you believe and what you think is important for them to know about what you believe, because that's how they make a decision on who they vote for. So, ladies, what is your platform?
Well, my platform is community prosecution, because what happens in one part of Anne Arundel County may be different than what happens in another part of the county. I think it's important in Anne Arundel County that there are prosecutors who are assigned to the various communities in the county, because crime that happens in one part of the county may be completely different from crime that happens in another part of the county. So you need a prosecutor's office who can work with community leaders, the neighborhoods, the police, to make sure that those prosecutors know what's going on so they can keep our neighbors safe. So if I'm state's attorney, I'll be sure to meet with the community leaders to find out what their needs are.
Pam, what's your platform?
So my platform is, I think, is what I mentioned earlier, is that District 33 has a very large number of Democrats. So my platform is educating the voters in District 33 about who their representatives are and how they are voting. Our 3 delegates have voted against the Equal Pay Act. They have voted to lift the ban on fracking. They have voted against the Protect Our Schools Act, voted against the College Affordability Act. In my district, we have how the demographics work. We have about 130,000 people who live there. We have about 100,000 registered voters. Of those voters, there are 33,000 Democrats, 39,000 Republicans, and the rest are the unaffiliated. So given those numbers, it doesn't make any sense that all 3 of our elected officials are Republican. There should be one seat at least for Democrats, and that's why I'm running, to give those people a voice.
So what change are you seeking to make in your position?
Well, I think that the way that we're fighting crime has changed dramatically. When I was a brand new prosecutor, we didn't have DNA evidence. And now we have technology where people are committing crimes on the internet. They're using their cell phones, which are more powerful than computers used to be when I first became a prosecutor. So I would like to innovate the office, and I'd like to be able to tackle cyber crimes in cases where identity theft is occurring. We have to stay one step ahead of the criminals. So our prosecutors in our office has to be really on the cutting edge of preventing crime before it happens. And that takes a huge effort and a huge shift in the way we look at prosecution of crimes.
Pam?
So I think for me, I think it's helpful if people kind of understand the demographics of the district I live in. So we have about 130,000 people. Of those, about 100,000 of them are registered voters. 33,000 are registered Democrats, 39,000 are registered Republicans, and the rest are unaffiliated. So if you look at the fact that you have 3 Republicans in office, that doesn't leave a lot of room for other people to have their voice heard. So what I'm trying to change is, look, I'm your voice, I'm your non-Republican voice, I'm your voice for policies and putting legislation in place on the things you want, not on the things they want.
So can bipartisanship partnerships work?
Absolutely. My former deputy state's attorney was a Republican, because it didn't matter what someone's party affiliation is when you are trying to fight crime. What we have to do is we have to find our common ground And obviously, public safety is probably one of the biggest priorities for citizens here in Anne Arundel County. There's no reason to not vote for me because I'm a Democrat, because I can tell you I am a hardworking, hard-charging prosecutor whose number one goal is to make this county safe. And I had people in my office of every affiliation, independent, Democrats, Republicans. I've worked with county executive who was Republican, the last two county executives who were Republican. I worked with Democratic sheriff. I worked with various people in law enforcement who were all different parties. It has nothing to do with it. I promise if I'm elected, I will continue with that way of thinking, because there's only one goal, is to keep all of us safer.
Pam?
Yeah, I agree with Ann 100%. And another area is fighting the opioid epidemic. I've seen, both sides come together and work together and do some really great things.
So tell me, what do you think are the biggest opportunities for your community in the next 5 years?
Funding our schools. I mean, I'm very concerned because our schools are losing their rankings. So we need to catch that and get them back up to where they were 8 years ago. And we have some real opportunities to make a dent in the opioid problem.
All right. Ann?
Well, the opioid problem is a huge issue because we can't just jail our way through the opioid crisis. Mark my words, I will still prosecute people who bring these poisons into our community. It's a terrible blight. But what we also have to do is we have to help the people who have been victimized by the drug dealers and the ones who are suffering. So the opioid crisis is a prime example of how we have to fight strategically. I'm always going to be prosecuting the people who are bringing these poisons into our county, but we also have to look at their victims, the victims of the opioid crisis and the people who are using drugs, because if we're not getting treatment for them and seeking alternatives to jail for them, they're just going to keep reoffending. And in my special victims unit position as a prosecutor, I've seen the effect that opioids have on children and on families. I've seen families devastated. I've seen children victimized because their parents were addicted to drugs, not feeding them, not caring for them, not seeking medical help. I've had children who've been murdered because their parents were addicted to drugs. So I am fully committed to addressing the opioid crisis from both the prosecution standpoint as well as the health crisis that it is and our need to get treatment for those who are afflicted and addicted.
What's going on in your communities, what keeps you up at night?
Well, I mean, I have an 11-year-old and a 16-year-old. But aside from that, I really worry about the schools. I brought that up before, and I worry about the opioid epidemic. That keeps me up. And I think on a broader level, I worry about the shrinking middle class. I worry about families struggling to make ends meet and families struggling to find a way to send their kid to college. And it's different now. It's just really different than when I was in the workforce, back in the 90s, where you'd get promoted and you'd get a raise and this and that. It's just not happening anymore.
What keeps me up at night is worrying about our children and our families. We have to work with the schools, we have to work with Parks and Recreation and the Health Department and all these different groups to come together to make sure that our children are in their safest place, that they're safe in school, that they're safe on the highway. Even enforcing drunk and drug driving laws keeps us all safe. We've had the decriminalization of marijuana, and so we have to make sure that people are not using drugs and getting behind the wheel of a car. We have to make sure that people are not drinking and getting behind the wheel of a car, or taking opioids or other drugs and getting behind the wheel of a car, because that's when it impacts us even further. So we have to be very aware of the substance abuse and the substance use and how it's going to impact the average person in Anne Arundel County. So we have to keep our county roads safe, we have to keep our children safe in the schools, and we do that by partnering with law enforcement, with the schools, with the various county agencies to make sure that we are aware of all the issues of the moment.
So tell me, who is your personal hero and why?
Well, I have a group of heroes, and they were all female attorneys in the state's attorney's office. I used to watch them try the most difficult cases. I watched them try serial rapists. I watched them try serial murderers. They were on the cutting edge with DNA evidence, with blood evidence, and I always wanted to emulate them. So I would go and watch them in trials, and then I tried to use them as mentors and do as well as they did. So I think it's very important for especially young women out there, find a mentor, look for someone that you can kind of model your career or your behavior on, and you learn so much from other women. And women are really wise, and if we embrace that and celebrate that, I think it lifts all of us up, and I stand on the shoulders of a lot of other women in Anne Arundel County who came before me as prosecutors in the county. So I've seen multiple trials where serial rapists have been acquitted because the evidence of their prior crimes did not come into evidence in this crime as other crimes evidence. So currently there's a bill before the legislature where we're trying to get that passed. It's very frustrating as a prosecutor to know that you're prosecuting a rapist who has done the exact same thing to other women. For example, broken in the exact same way, used the exact same phrases to the victim, used the exact same implements, to tie the victim up or to leave something behind. And the courts are very, very reluctant to allow us to use that kind of evidence in the new trial because they say it will prejudice the defendant. Well, hopefully the legislature will pass this legislation. It's a serial sexual offender law, and it would be a useful tool for prosecutors.
So is that part of your platform, Ann?
Well, currently there is a prosecutor in the city of Baltimore and other legislators who are pushing for this law. If it doesn't get passed this year, and it's been in the legislature for many years, I would definitely make it part of my platform because there is no excuse for the serial predator law not to pass. It protects children, it protects women, it protects men from any serial sexual offender from getting away with it simply because we're not allowed to use the evidence that they've done it multiple times before in the exact same way. So I would definitely use that as a means to help the citizens of the state of Maryland and Anne Arundel County and fight for that in the legislature myself.
I'm familiar with that bill because I also serve on the board of directors for the Maryland Legislative Agenda for Women, and that was one of the bills that we selected to work on.
Right. It's being stalled again.
Yeah.
Dan?
Well, I think at this point in my life, I look to women leaders in government. Of course, you have Janet Rankin, who is the original nasty woman, right? They said, someone asked her if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? And she said, I would do everything the same, but I would be nastier. And then, of course, there's Barbara Mikulski. Just watching her career and learning from her and how she navigated as a woman in Congress is something to look up to and something to model and something to follow.
Now, this is the one that counts. Why should someone vote for you?
Someone should vote for me because they're going to have a voice that they're not going to have with the current 3 delegates. But can I say something here?
Yes.
And this is speaking on behalf of all of the women who are running for office. Things don't change in government unless you elect the right people. Protests are great, megaphones are great, all of that is really great, but it's not going to change until you get the right people elected. So if you know a woman out there who's running for office, get behind her. Write her a check, call her up, offer to work on her campaign, because that is what we need. I had a group of women that got behind me and they knocked 500 doors last weekend. And we just need more of that. So I'm just encouraging every woman, this is 2018. It's time to put the megaphone down, find a candidate, and get behind her.
I absolutely agree. People have to come out and vote, and you have to vote for the right person. I think that I'm the right person because I have the experience, I have the character, I have the moral force behind me of being a lifelong prosecutor who not only is in it to bring people to justice, but to be fair and to be honest and to represent the citizens to the best of my ability. That's a promise that I'll make, that I'll always do 110% of my best work.
And lastly, is there anything else that you would like to share?
Anne Arundel County suffers sometimes when people don't come out and vote. We had some of the lowest voter turnout in 2014. It was about 51%. And that was off by about 10% from other gubernatorial elections. So if you want to see change, if you want to see people represent your voice, people have to come out and vote. Please take your friends, take your neighbors, take your mom, take your dad, take your kids if they're of age. My youngest son has the opportunity to vote for his mother next year because he's turning 18. So if you make a commitment to come out and vote for the best candidates, I think that you'll see some positive change in Anne Arundel County in 2018.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's all about getting people motivated to go to the polls. I mean, we've got Trump right now, and he's keeping us very angry and very motivated, and we have to keep the momentum going. We have to keep the conversation going, but it's all about getting to the polls. Like Ann said, 51%, only 51% of the Democrats came out to vote in 2014. Unaffiliated, 7%. So we have to get there. And even, you know, when we saw what happened in Virginia, which was phenomenal, that was still only 40% of the voter turnout. So that's the conversation. Your vote matters. It matters. And you've got to get out there and get to the polls.
So ladies, how can people reach you and get involved in your campaign?
You can go to my website, www.pamluby.com. There's a place where it says volunteer, and you can pick what you want to do. You can put a yard sign up, you can canvass, you can phone bank, and there's also a place where you can make a donation. So, you know, we struggle as candidates. Unfortunately, it costs money to run a campaign, and we need all the help we can get.
You can follow me on Twitter at Ann Colt Leitness. You can follow me on Facebook at Ann Colt Leitness for State's Attorney. Or you can go to AnnArundelann.com and check me out, make a donation, volunteer. I'd appreciate it very much.
Well, you heard it right here. These are 2 fine candidates that are running for office in Maryland. And I want you to remember Ann Colt Leitness, who's running a candidate for the state attorney of Anne Arundel County, and Pamela Luby, who is a candidate for the delegate of District 33 in Maryland. We thank you, ladies, for being with us, for her voice, and we wish you well on your journey.
Thank you.
This is Jules Dunham Howie, and we will see you next time on Her Voice.